Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Delegate Bagnall's virtual town hall. Thank you for being here with us. We super appreciate all of you all, especially our esteemed panel. Delegate Bagnall will introduce them all individually in just a moment. My name is Luke. I'm just here to give you some of the housekeeping for tonight's meeting. So please do remain muted, and if the signal seems to be a little slow, go ahead and switch off your video. That will certainly help with the presentation of the meeting. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and we will get to as many of them as possible. If for some reason get all the questions, then feel free to email the delegate's office. I'll place the email address in the chat momentarily. Or of course, you can visit the website, and there is a contact form on there at heatherbagnall.com. Other than that, if you do have any technical issues or any other questions, feel free to send a message to me directly, and I will do my best to sort that out. But other than that, with no further ado, I will go ahead and introduce Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you so much for joining us today for the 8th of our 2021 legislative session virtual town hall series. I'm Heather Bagnall, your delegate in District 33. I first wanted to thank you all once again for your continued commitment to staying safe by practicing physical distancing and safe protocols as we work through the ramp up of our COVID vaccine rollout. It's hard to believe we are little more than a week past sine die in one of the most significant, impactful, and unusual sessions in our history. With the crises created by COVID on multiple fronts, we were tasked not only with the usual operations of a legislative session, but with ensuring the safety and solvency of our Maryland communities, while also addressing long-standing systemic issues in our institutions, which were laid bare in the midst of the pandemic. Even as we operated, our military was being called upon as first responders to the crisis, which it was whether it was in establishing field hospitals, aiding in food distribution drives, or testing and vaccination rollout, while still continuing to serve here and overseas. With our resources stretched thin, we were able to see some of the fault lines in our systems begin to show. And although we made significant progress on many fronts this legislative session, I believe we are just beginning the national postmortem of what worked, what needs work, and how we can serve our populations better, more effectively, and with greater coordination. Tonight, we're going to talk about some of the legislation which we adopted, specifically aimed at assisting our active duty and veteran members and families, and some of the resources we provide locally, and what comes next. Now, I don't begin to pretend I am an expert in this field, which is why I am so grateful to have a panel of experts who will help guide the conversation. I am honored to be joined tonight by Delegate Mike Rogers, District 32, Vice Chair of the Anne Arundel County Delegation, a member of the Economic Matters Committee and retired Army Colonel, and sponsor of the Veterans Advocacy and Education Act. Dana Burrell, Director of Outreach for the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs, Lieutenant Commander Dan Tootle, U.S. Navy retired, and Brian Smith, U.S. Navy retired, and Vice Chair of the Board of Directors for the Maryland Therapeutic Riding Center in Crownsville. I also want to acknowledge Adam Spangler from Congressman Brown's office. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. As you can imagine, our panelists are very tightly scheduled, so we will attempt to answer all questions, but if we can't get to your question on the call, we will circle back with you to make sure you have answers. If you have a question and have not submitted it in advance, please feel free to put your question in the chat. I also wanted to thank Max Pierce and Luke Tudball, who once again are working behind the scenes to make me look far more tech savvy than I am capable. Now, following tonight's town hall, feel free to email my office and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And please make sure to follow our social media. We will be announcing our legislative wrap up and sending out our end of session newsletter this week. With that, I am honored to introduce Dana Burrell, the Director of Outreach for the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and welcome.
Thank you, Delegate Bagnall. It's a real pleasure and honor to be joining you as well as the other esteemed members of the panel this evening. And on behalf of the Secretary, I bring warm greetings. He sends his apologies for not being here today, but hopefully I can do a good job of filling his shoes. I serve as the Director of Outreach and Advocacy for the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs. We are a state government agency. While we collaborate heavily with the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, Healthcare Administration, Benefits Administration, and Cemetery Administration, we are not directly connected to them. We operate 5 core programs. We have a service and benefits program with benefit specialists scattered about the state, assisting veterans with acquiring VA benefits. We operate a very robust cemetery and memorial program. It's actually the busiest state veteran cemetery program in the country. We also operate Charlotte Hall Veterans Home. It is an assisted living and skilled nursing home in St. Mary's County. We operate the Maryland Veterans Trust Fund, which is a 501c3 that has been set up to assist veterans who are experiencing temporary financial difficulties. And I oversee outreach and advocacy, which is essentially the communications arm for the department. In addition to overseeing communications, I also sit on a number of different governor's commissions, councils, boards, et cetera, and oversee a number of different initiatives that I look forward to being able to possibly discuss this evening. Despite all of the challenges that our department experienced and the entire really state, country, and world has experienced over the course of the last year in response to COVID, I'm very, very proud to say that we as an agency have done an exceptional job of realigning the way that we do business to ensure that we are continuing to serve our veterans to the best of our abilities. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to answering any questions and just being a part of the conversation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for being here. And I am going to come back to you because I do want to give you an opportunity to talk more about the services that we do provide in the state. And part of the conversation I want to have tonight too is about that coordination between state, local, and federal government, because I know that can be a challenge. And I feel like this the pandemic has actually presented us with an opportunity because some of those silos did come down. Some of those walls came down. Delegate Rogers, I want to turn to you as the sponsor of the bill. I know that you have had other bills in before, and I know that you were integral in some of the funding for Charlotte Hall, but you sponsored the Veterans Advocacy and Education Act this year, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to where that came from, and what it does, and how you see that assisting our veteran populations.
So first, let me thank you, Delegate Bagnall, for hosting this town hall. I think it's an important conversation. As you mentioned earlier, with so many things going on during the pandemic, and particularly during this past legislative session, which has been like no other, I think it's very, very helpful, and I'm grateful that you decided to have a conversation about veterans and issues that impact veterans. And I would also say that, you know, the august members of this panel, I have had the opportunity to get to know and work with in various capacities. So I'm honored to be a part of such a great panel, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the awesome, outstanding, excellent coordination and support that the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs provide, and the services that Ms. Burrow renders on a daily basis, working not only with the federal government, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, but also the Veterans Commissions across the state, which sort of kind of speaks to what you mentioned earlier, Delegate Bagnall. And so I guess with that opening, I will have to be forthright and mention, while I was a co-sponsor of the legislation you mentioned, I can't take credit for being the actual sponsor, but I do think it's a significant step in the right direction, and will certainly have a positive impact on veterans. But however, there is a piece of legislation that I did sponsor, and I think it's something very important to talk about, and it did pass, and that's HB 70, which was created contract preferences for the construction of net zero homes. We started that effort last year. We ran out of time, as you know, as the session ended for the first time, early for the first time since the Civil War. But it passed this year. And so what it'll do is it's a climate friendly bill. And it's not often that you necessarily put climate and veterans as well as labor all together, because it has opportunities for apprenticeship programs as part of its funding. But creating net zero homes, I think, will be something that we're going to start to see, not just from a residential perspective, but also we're going to start looking at schools and governmental buildings going forward under various other climate friendly legislation. So it's good to sort of see the beginning of that with this bill, but also a bill that creates opportunities for small, minority, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses. So was very proud of that legislation, and proud to serve on the executive board for the Veterans Caucus, where we actually have a chance to decide on the executive board which bills will actually receive support from the caucus. And so that's been an honor of mine, another opportunity to serve, and I'm gonna leave it there. But there are a couple other bills based on time that I think that I can talk to later that made it through, that were helpful, but also ones that didn't make it through and that we will continue to fight for next session. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Delegate Rogers. And I think, you make a couple really good points, because so often when we look at these issues, we're looking at them through that singular filter. And the fact is that here is an opportunity which is not just serendipitous, but where we have a comprehensive policy that touches on all of these different aspects and all of these different communities. And that is I believe that is also the mark of really good legislation, is when when it's meeting the needs of multiple communities within one piece of legislation. And I am going to come back to you to talk more about the role of the executive board, because of course this year being virtual, that role became so much more integral to the General Assembly session, because we were looking, I'm a member of the Veterans Caucus. However, we were only able to have one meeting of the full caucus, and it was a virtual meeting. So we were really looking to the expertise of the executive board to inform our decisions and inform our priorities. So I really appreciate the work that you did on that. Mr. Tootle, Lieutenant Colonel Tootle, I want to turn to you. You and I have been working on a piece of legislation that is really important, is a long time coming, and we have decided, I think, together to pivot our approach, because we have been coming up against a roadblock, and this was a resolution that you brought to me in my first session, in my first year in office, for the creation of a commission for a Women Veterans Center. For anyone who doesn't know the history, well, I can let you speak to the history. There is a long history of trying to create memorials to honor our women veterans. And there is a lot of history behind the original memorial and the attempt to basically recreate a commission to do this work. So where do you feel we are in that, and why is this such a huge priority?
Well, it's long overdue. We have of the 370 some odd thousand veterans that we do have in the state of Maryland, we have a good proportion of those who, of course, are women, and 14% of our veterans within the state are, in fact, currently alive veterans. Many who have served all the way from prior to World War I. All the way through the Gulf War, we've had strong participation of women within our military forces. And at this point in the state of Maryland, we just really haven't honored that population. I'm kind of an archaic kind of guy. When I went, my 21 years of active duty was with a combat force, a force that could go to combat, that did not allow women to participate in combat operations, strictly in support roles. That certainly has changed. I retired in 1984. And over the time from 1984 to the present, women have moved in just every branch of the service. And even to today, I think we have our first U.S. Navy submarine skipper who's a woman. So that kind of gives you an idea of how widespread participation is. Anyway, what we currently have in the state of Maryland is a fairly small memorial up at the travel stop on I-95 up near Perryville is where it is. And it really doesn't recognize or honor the participation, the numbers, and the significance of the veterans who reside here in the state, and not only to honor those who are here today, but to honor those who have gone before, and to certainly recognize who will be participating as members of the armed forces years to come. That's who we are. We are equal opportunity and being able to serve our nation in this manner, as well as the fact that we're all standing in mutual danger together and risk as the years go forward. So anyway, the legislation that I asked Delegate Bagnall and also Senator Riley this year was a repeat of last year's attempt to create a commission to start studying this issue and sort out what such a memorial should be. Kind of got lost in last year's cutoff of the General Assembly. This year, the bill was reintroduced as a joint resolution. It was Senate and as well as House. And it began to get buried with all the other stuff that's going on, all the challenges that we had in the General Assembly this year. Heather and I talked about that and said, let's wait and put this in next year in a slightly different manner and bring this forward with so it doesn't get buried, it doesn't get lost in all the other work, and has a chance to, in fact, go forward and start moving in the direction we'd like it to go. So anyway, I'm happy to have helped try to move that along, and looking forward to doing it again.
Well, and I really appreciate the work that you've been doing in Anne Arundel County, because again, when we're talking about those veterans services and veteran needs, you've really sort of been on that micro level, seeing the need and trying to address it. And I will say that even over the last 3 years that I've been in office, we've seen a massive shift in sort of a groundswell in support of meeting the needs of women veterans, that they are unique, that they are different, and that we've had the Women's Caucus that now has a women's veterans event every year, and has been they've actually made this a priority, and this was one of the priority bills. So I do believe that there is a broader recognition now of the need for equity and the need for services for women veterans as an important part of our community. And Mr. Smith, I miss you in District 33. For those who don't know, Brian Smith was a constituent of mine when I first took office, and we have worked together through some of the work that Maryland Therapeutic Riding in Crownsville does. But I know that you have been you've been involved with veterans issues in a number of different organizations, and we did have quite a few bills that dealt with animals, therapeutic animals, service animals, and providing animals for veterans this year. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the work that you've been doing and why it is so essential to have those resources.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me tonight. It's great to see a few of you, and always the hardworking Dana Burrell. I will say that until you experience a Department of Veterans Affairs in another state, you won't really appreciate the great work that she does for Maryland. So treat her like the treasure that she is. So I've been very blessed over the past 4 years to be involved in the Maryland General Assembly on a variety of bills. Even though I'm sort of transitional with my wife dragging me out of state, I was still able to testify on a few this year before the General Assembly, albeit via Zoom, not in person in Annapolis, as I would prefer. But they really focused on, it seems like most of them passed, they really focused on some of the issues that are very meaningful to me as a post 9/11 combat vet with friends that have succumbed to the scourge of suicide as a result of their service. Just seeing the challenges that we faced as a nation at war with an all volunteer force for 20 years, where we've had 27 million of our young men and women deploy, half of them more than once. A third of them have disabled, about a fifth of them have PTSD, and we come back and we don't always have the social safety net at the federal or the state level that we really need to not only reintegrate them into our society that they fought for, but to address the issues that they're facing and keep them alive, to be honest. I'm a big believer in the healing nature of animals, whether it's dogs or horses. That's why I'm thrilled to be on the board of directors at the lovely Maryland Therapeutic Riding in beautiful Crownsville, Maryland, which is in the fantastic 33rd district, I might add, and get to see our horses healing heroes, as well as being a no pun intended, rabid supporter of hero dogs up in Davidsonville, I think it is. Another great place in Maryland. I mean, that all runs together to me. Gaithersburg, somewhere up there. I can find the dogs. Maybe I probably can't find the zip code. But those things can really make a difference. And there were 3 bills that I was thrilled to be a part of this year that appears passed. The first is having therapy dogs available for our veterans in treatment courts. We have over 700,000 veterans nationwide that are justice involved, that it's a particular scourge for our post 9/11 vets. I know Congressman Brown's guy here will appreciate that due to the bad paper discharges that the military has kind of kicked some people to the side that potentially had some PTSD issues, and they haven't really gotten the help they need, but they've certainly gotten involved in the criminal justice system. So I'm hopeful that having things like therapy dogs available for veterans treatment courts can make a difference for our veterans who fought for us. I believe Pets for Vets made it through, and that would waive adoption fees.
Yes, it did.
County animal shelters for veterans who wish to adopt a pet, which can, vet saves pet, pet saves vet. It really happens. And finally, the one that I'm very excited about, because this is going to make a life-saving difference, is mental health first aid training for our veterans and their families, an internationally recognized program that is being adopted by many organizations. A therapeutic riding organization that I'm peripherally involved with up in Ohio is adopting it. All their staff is going to get trained in it. We're providing it. And it's not mental health surgery. It's not mental health advanced care. It's first aid. It's when you're on the scene and you see somebody, you recognize the signs that they may be facing challenges. You'll know the resources to help connect them with. And it gives that mental health triage connection that, we can start saving some of those people that, fought for what we enjoy. So I think those are the 3 big ones that I was thrilled to be a part of. I'm really honored to be here tonight. I really appreciate Delegate Bagnall's concern and genuine care for these type of issues. And I'd love to have you back out at Maryland Therapeutic Riding here in the near future and meet our new horses. So thanks for having me here tonight.
Well, thank you so much for everything you do. And I will definitely take you up on that, because I've enjoyed every visit out there. And you actually have given me a great segue, because Ms. Burrell, I know I mentioned this ahead of time, but you know, I sit on the Health and Government Operations Committee, and my focus is on behavioral health, particularly access for adolescents. But when we're talking about behavioral health needs for veterans, we're often talking about a collaboration of care, which can be a challenge. We don't necessarily have a behavioral health center, veteran center, as I understand it, specific. So we're working with a coordination of care, but there is an aspect of cultural competency that's really essential for veterans. And one of the pieces of legislation that kind of went hand in glove with the bill that Mr. Smith was talking about, the mental health first aid, I felt was the Shealy Hickson Behavioral Health Matching Grant. And one of the questions that we had in the hearing, which we were really glad to hear the answer, was that it was for that any veteran was eligible, regardless of discharge reasoning. And that's really important, because correct me if I'm wrong, but we are still trying to figure out how to provide services for dishonorable discharge. And when we're talking about somebody who is in a behavioral health crisis, whether it be substance abuse, mental illness, PTSD, they really need those resources, and we have to figure out how to address those gaps in services. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to some of the services that we do have, and how we can be a good partner in addressing those gaps.
Sure, absolutely. So the Maryland Department of Health has the Maryland's Commitment to Veterans Behavioral Health Initiative. It's actually the program that I came from prior to transitioning over to MDVA. They provide behavioral health service coordination for veterans, active duty, National Guard, reserves, family members, and specifically to veterans regardless of their discharge status. So they are aligned to be able to assist veterans if they are eligible for VA, and veterans if they are not eligible for VA, regardless of the situation, whether it's income, private insurance, discharge, et cetera. Right around the time that COVID hit, MCV launched Operation Roll Call, which is similarly to the state's Department of Aging initiative, where the veteran can contact MCV and request to have regular phone calls made incoming to them, just to check on them to see how they are doing. And I can put that number in the chat when I finish my remarks. But it is really a great initiative that they have within that program. And as I had mentioned previously, while MDVA is not a part of the federal VA, we do have an awareness that the vet centers that are scattered all around the state as well as the nation, they provide readjustment counseling services to veterans, combat veterans, specifically veterans who are survivors of military sexual trauma. They are starting to be able to see veterans with other than honorable discharges. The VA, and again, I don't work for the VA, so I'm not speaking on behalf of the VA in my comments here, but the VA, I believe, has definitely recognized since 9/11 the growing need to treat veterans with other than honorable discharge, especially for those who were discharged for issues related to substance use, addiction, minor assaults, things of that nature, because they recognize that for an individual who has experienced combat trauma, who might be living with post-traumatic stress, and if it's gone untreated, it can lead to the individual reaching to substances to cope. So I think the VA has, and again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the VA here, but I think the VA has come a long way in recognizing the need to provide services to veterans with other than honorable discharges.
And I'm so grateful to hear you say that, because I you know, again, I don't think as lay people we always understand. We have a clear understanding of the issues that when you even talk about readjustment counseling. I'm not sure a layperson necessarily understands exactly what that means, and so when we are looking at how to provide services and adequate services and resources, I think sometimes the challenge can be our own lack of cultural competency in what the military culture really is and what it calls for.
And just to piggyback on that, there is a program that was created in the 2017 legislative session called the Veteran Services Specialist Program in State Government. And what that did was it created liaisons in all state agencies that now come together on a quarterly basis to develop a better understanding of the military experience, the veteran experience, what transition to civilian life looks like. The idea behind this program is to improve the services that we provide to veterans who are in state service, and then also to improve upon the services that we provide to veterans who are constituents across the state. And there are a myriad of trainings that are available. Actually, they're all on our website that are free to any host of organizations that desire to develop a better understanding of military culture. And I can share that in the link as well, or the chat.
Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you. And I will make sure that I share out all of these resources, on my social media after the town hall. Mr. Tootle, I'm going to turn to you because there was a question in the chat, which I think we have spoken about, which is are there challenges specific to Maryland or things that Maryland does better, worse than the federal government, when we're really talking about the local issues and our community. What are you seeing sort of at the ground level?
Well, what's present within the general population is also very present within the veterans population as well. Whether it's recently separated at end of service, or whether it's full-time retirement, such as Mike Rogers and ourselves, of course, have gone through the full retirement process and have emerged with the uniform put in the closet in around age 40. We have many veterans. As a matter of fact, about 30% of our Anne Arundel County veterans alone who are Gulf War veterans. And we're talking about a very solid mix of retirees, but dominated by folks who have finished their obligated service and are not retiring, maybe are still associated with reserves, but these are folks who are living and working and within the general population, just regular like everybody else, living in communities and experiencing the same kind of challenges that the general population has. Now, just to segue for a moment to specific problems, significant problems with regard to our female veterans. And, why is a guy talking about this? Okay, but because, this is very present and within our veterans population. Our as I said earlier, our veterans, our female veterans only comprise about 14% of the total veteran population here in the state as well as in the county. But female veterans face specific problems associated with the service, and a good portion of those have to do with sexual abuse and things of that nature, and rape, and so on. But as a result, women veterans bring to behavioral support a slightly different and significant difference than those presented generally by male veterans, and that needs to be recognized. And Dana can speak to this from her experience at MDVA, where more and more the Veterans Administration is stepping up to that issue and beginning to recognize that there are special needs there. Now, what I just posted on the chat line is the how to contact the Veterans Crisis line, as a veteran, either by phone or by text to go for help. I'm also going to be posting on the chat line specific Anne Arundel County resources for veterans, at least in the initial contact stage, because during this pandemic period, that of course we're still in, hopefully beginning to come out of, the county executive's office did establish within the Community Engagement and Constituent Services Office, the CECS office, a specific entity called the Veterans Services Coordination Center, and it operates, within the CECS. But folks who are veterans, who are on active duty, military families, and so on, who need to reach out to county services, behavioral or otherwise, and who identify themselves as veteran or active duty associated, come under the special management and cognizance of Pete Smith, who is the Anne Arundel County Military and Veterans Liaison Officer. And Pete takes on the responsibility, working with the CECS staff, to direct Anne Arundel County folks, whether they're active or retired or as veterans, into the specific services that are available within Anne Arundel County, and to include the full range of behavioral services that are specific to this particular conversation, but other services as needed. And I'll be posting the CECS contact number. And like I say, if you're active duty or if you're a veteran and you need county support, in addition to what's available from the state, from specifically is identified and provided through Dana's office, Dana's desk, whether it's through the Veteran Services officers, who in fact are now being placed in the state by Maryland state funds and co-located within our motor vehicle administration offices. The first one is already standing up in Glen Burnie, and I think a second one has stood up very, very, very shortly. There's 6 of them now, from what Dana just put her fingers up. These are folks that are specialized to provide veteran support. So the support points are there, but what we found in working with the county executive's office is something that popped up in the County Executive Pittman's transition program way back when, in 2018, when he was elected office, was the fact that there are many places where support to veterans are in fact available, whether it be at the federal level, through the Veterans Administration, whether it be through the MDVA, or whether it be through local county governments. The problem is knowing which one to go to, what's available, and so on. And that was the reason why the Veteran Services Coordination Center was established in the CECS office in Anne Arundel County. Now, I know that Prince George's County, that has the largest number of veterans in the state, and Montgomery County, which I think has the 3rd largest number in this veterans in the state, Anne Arundel having the 2nd largest number of veterans in the state, have wide-ranging services that are available, whether you're a veteran or not. But those three counties, and including Howard County, for instance, all have offices and people who are specifically focused on providing services to veterans and active duty folks and their families. So The services and support are there. The trick is knowing which one to go to, what's available, and these offices that have been established in the county, as well as the absolutely valuable resource that Dana provides, can get folks directed into the right place, talking to the right people to get the services that they're eligible for and can provide the support. The crisis lines are kind of like the first encounter to get people moving down the line, but beyond those crisis line encounters are actual services and support that can really help people.
Thank you, and I think that's a really consistent challenge that we face, not just with veteran services, but with all of our resources, with our behavioral health resources, with our economic resources, with our grant programs. It's so often that we have these resources available, and people don't know where to go to find out. And in some ways, I think that falls to us often in the legislature to know how to connect people. And Delegate Rogers, it's like you read my mind, because I was about to turn to you, because you are a veteran who's now in office. So you do have a better understanding of these challenges and the culture and even the legislation that we're looking at, how it will impact these specific communities.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say you raised your hand. I know that you had a comment.
I did. And so I appreciate that segue, Delegate Bagnall. I raised my hand because I wanted to piggyback on some of the things that Dan mentioned, but also to try to address a question that I saw that my good friend Scott Depew put in the chat, and that was with respect to educational opportunities as it relates to Maryland and in general. So there are a lot of educational opportunities for veterans. A lot of it has to do with the contract you signed and the status that you transitioned to on your way from active duty. And so Maryland has a number of programs, particularly for those that are in state, that will allow in-state tuition for certain categories of veterans, and that's something that's huge. Having a son that spent his first year at Coastal Carolina, I know that extra $20,000 hit is something pretty significant. So to be able to get in-state tuition rates is very meaningful for folks that are serving on active duty, as well as some of our veterans, depending upon their category of status. And so that's something that is available, and that's something that Maryland has been helpful at a state level in terms of acting. But going back to Dan's point about some of the things in Anne Arundel County, I know that Brian Smith was one of the folks in the vanguard last year in terms of helping pass legislation which provided property tax relief for certain categories of disabled veterans. And so it was enabling legislation, which meant that Maryland passed a law, but they weren't going to tell the counties how to suck the egg. Well, in Anne Arundel County's case, they're one of the counties in the vanguard in terms of actually enacting that enabling legislation and creating property tax relief for veterans in certain categories of based on their percentage of disability. And so I thought that was something that was very meaningful that Anne Arundel County did, and I'm looking to see other counties sort of do that. And on that same note, one of the things that we haven't been as successful with, and that's income tax modification for veterans. I know that that's something that's near and dear to both Dan and Brian's heart, as well as my own. And I know that there are 31 other states that have done this. Maryland hasn't gotten around to it yet, but we'll continue to, move that legislation forward and hopefully find a way to where we can find common ground in terms of putting veterans on equal footing in Maryland as they are in other states. So just thought I'd add that to the conversation.
I'm glad. I'm actually very appreciative too, because I didn't see that comment in the chat. So thank you for catching it. I didn't, I would hate to think that I overlooked it. It was not intentional.
I'm used to seeing Brian put stuff out there and responding to it. I mean, Scott. I meant Scott. Sorry about that, Scott.
No, I appreciate that. And Mr. Smith, I wanted to turn back to you because you have been, you have been working with the legislature for a number of years. I know this year was different in that that we were virtual, but you were able to advocate from afar. And you spoke earlier a little bit about your experience now being out of state and experiencing the veteran services, outside of Maryland. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to sort of speak to how Maryland does it differently and what you would like to see us working on moving forward.
Well, I tell you, so at the moment, my wife got relocated to the Hampton Roads area in Virginia due to her job. She works for NASA, and she invited me to come along with her, which while I appreciated, I had to leave my wonderful home up in National Harbor. So I'm getting used to life out of state. Virginia is definitely different. I mean, we have nearly well over 700,000 veterans in the state. So it's a very veteran-centric state with a lot of large military bases. What I would say though at the state level, I mean, there's always this sense that, the federal big VA is now doing something, and somehow this perception that actually that translates into something happening. Hey, we now have this program available, but what's the program delivery look like? How does the execution, what does it look like? I've had the chance to work with the Veterans Benefits Center at William and Mary Law School, trying to better connect veterans with the benefits at the federal level that they may be entitled to. And of course, that remains a big challenge. It's no accident that difficulty explains the inability to reduce the veteran suicide rate. I mean, there's still a big problem. New Secretary of VA said 74% more money for veteran mental health. He's right on the mark. You can talk it, you can issue a press release, delivering programmatically is a very different thing. So I'm glad to see that's going in a good direction. The great thing about Maryland, and I kind of was poking Dana on this at the beginning a little bit, is that even though Maryland Veterans Affairs, I mean, there are a lot of things that at the federal level you would think that they would own. I mean, like health at the federal level is a big part of what VA does. Health at the state level is not, but yet Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs is a great umbrella entity in that it refers people out. It can help you make that connection because, as Dan mentioned, how the heck do I plug into this monstrosity of what might be out there without getting so frustrated I give up and go, do something harmful to myself or others. So Maryland Veterans Affairs is really exceptional at communicating through their newsletter, through their social media, through being very proactive in the legislature, through really doing the best to try to connect people with things that don't directly fall under them per se. Also, the thing I would say is that the county departments of health in Maryland are exceptional at doing the communications thing, because if you're not communicating what you're doing, it probably doesn't matter what you're doing because nobody knows what you're doing and it won't really have an effect. So I would have to say Maryland state government and the Maryland General Assembly, I mean, there's always things we could do better, but I find a genuine concern and caring in the state government and the General Assembly for doing the very best they can for the veterans that are there. And in that respect, I mean, you just can't hardly say do something better. The challenge is when I go to an event with Wounded Warrior Project or Heroes on the Water or all these other wonderful organizations that try to connect with vets in more of a social, recreational, therapeutic environment, you get a bunch of us together and all we do, well, after we talk about what our VA rating is and what we're getting and what we can do about that, is all these wonderful programs that nobody knows anything about. And as good a job as Dana and the gang do at MDVA, there's just so much stuff out there. So it's almost like you have to plug into certain preferred partnerships to find stuff. Syracuse University Institute for Veterans and Military Families is phenomenal on the transition piece. They are exceptional. Somebody was talking about education. You know, there's that stuff that the VA will do for you, but what about all that other stuff that non-VA, non-governmental people will do for you? I mean, if you're looking to get out and do something IT, I mean, Microsoft has programs to help you get licensed in Microsoft type of credentialing. Salesforce, which is probably one of probably the biggest CRM in the world, offers VetForce training. You can get free administrator certified through VetForce, which is part of Salesforce, which is incredibly lucrative job opportunities. But you know, who the heck's going to know? Who knows about that? A lot of people don't. Hey, I want to be a PMP. Well, Vets to PMP, you know, has a great program at reduced cost to give you the education to get the PMP credential. So it's just one of those things that it's almost like we're a victim of our success, that so much stuff has been thrown toward transition that there's now so much stuff. Is who the heck knows what's out there? And, you know, it does kind of take some rational people like MDVA, the various departments at the state level, not to recommend or promote or say we endorse this, but sort of that clearinghouse for what's out there, because that is one of the biggest challenges that I hear veterans say writ large, is there's no real effective umbrella organization kind of clearinghouse that pulls in all this stuff and sorts it and prevents it and presents it in a coherent fashion that I can even hope to make sense. I mean, I work through American Corporate Partners doing transition type programs for veterans. And I mean, these folks at about a year out from transition, I mean, they're pulling their hair out. It's like, I don't know what to do. And then when I catch them, you know, if I get somebody that I'm advising that's freshly out, it's, you know, 2 years ahead of time, I only wish I had known. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's why I have no hair. I pulled all my hair out over that type of issue. But, you know, I tell you, I mean, Maryland does a lot of things right. And I get pulled into conversations with some of the veterans doing similar things in surrounding states like Pennsylvania, West Virginia. I'm now here in Virginia, some friends in South Carolina, North Carolina. Maryland's got a lot to be proud of. You know, you got there's always these high dollar programs that are going to come up every year at the General Assembly, the military retiree income tax attraction. I mean, it's always going to come up. Maybe you'll make some incremental changes, maybe you won't. Since Mike and Dan, I think, brought it up, I'll throw this out. Just as a reminder, in the 2018 legislative session, you guys passed a bill that got enacted that tagged Towson University to do a study and talk about the impact of military retirees in the state of Maryland. That report came out late 19, I want to say November 2019. So it's sort of teed up for that 2020 legislative session, which as we all know, the wheels kind of came off the bus. Well, man, that thing is good reading. I mean, if you can do simple math and read that report, man, you can chop 60 million a year in tax receipts and add $1 billion to the economy. I mean, that's right there for the reading. So, I mean, if nothing else, even if you can't do it, read the darn report that you tagged Towson University to produce, because man, that thing is good stuff. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, you know, if I were the property tax one, I'll throw this out as a feeler, you know, you guys can think about it. The property tax, you know, right now, if you're 100% permanent total, you don't pay property taxes in the state of Maryland. That's not county optional. That's kind of a done deal. You know, there's always, hey, let's get it to 90, let's get it to 80, let's get it to something. You know, they've made some sort of changes around the edges. One thing I'd like to throw out there for consideration is that, you know, the 100% permanently and total disabled vet is entitled to it. If they have a spouse, the veteran dies, they retain eligibility for it, they can keep it. What I'd ask you to consider is give them the opportunity, the surviving spouse, the ability to do a one-time sale of their house, because, you know, a lot of times we get older and we need to downsize and we need to get into something a little more friendly for an older person. give them a one-time chance to sell that darn house and buy something more suitable to their age and not lose that tax benefit. It does not increase the number of people eligible for it. It really, what it does is it generates a sale of a house and the purchase of another house, and you're probably freeing up a house that's going to bring in more tax money. So give that one some thought. I mean, that's one that I've been intrigued with for the last year. And, I'm sure I'll probably send somebody an email and say, boy, it'd be real nice if you do this stuff. But, that's about the only thing I've seen out of state. I mean, other than that, I wish I was back in Maryland.
Well, thank you. And thank you for that. It's on my notepad now. I'm rapidly filling up. Ms. Burrell, I was about to turn back to you. So again, it's like you read my mind. We've got a lot to unpack, but I also want to give you an opportunity, not just to respond, but, or to add on, but also to talk about the program with the MBA and our satellite sites, because I do think that's an important resource. And I always go back to something that our crisis intervention team says in Anne Arundel County. They say there's no such thing as a wrong access point. And I feel like to Mr. Smith's point and Mr. Tootle, like we have these essential access points. We just have to figure out how to get the word out. And I think some of that, again, falls back to us. That's why we're having this conversation tonight, because we need to be a good resource for this information as well.
Definitely. And so a couple of years ago, we were able to acquire a PIN to hire a full-time veterans benefit specialist in Anne Arundel County. And so the department began its search for a good location. And upon internal conversation, we learned that the Department of Natural Resources has set up kiosks in some of the MVAs where you can go in and you can, I guess, purchase your hunting or your fishing license. And we thought, well, gosh, wouldn't that be a great place to have a service office? Because, so many of us as just citizens of Maryland are going into the MVA to, do all the things that we do at the MVA. And what a better place to put a service office. So we have such amazing friends. Chrissy Nizer, the administrator of the MVA, just amazing support from the MVA. Once the department suggested the idea to her and her team, it wasn't even they didn't even give it a second thought. It was a, yes, we're going to make this happen. So since then we have, we opened up our first office in Glen Burnie. We have an office in Bel Air, Salisbury, Hagerstown, Cumberland, and Gaithersburg. And we continue to look elsewhere in the states because I know that our service officer, Jim Wilkes, who is in Glen Burnie, is just rocking and rolling up there and is just receiving so many veterans and is assisting so many veterans in Anne Arundel County. So it really has just been a phenomenal partnership that we have been able to forge with MBA. We could not be more thankful for that relationship. And to a couple of the points that Brian had made as it relates to kind of that age-old phrase now, there's so many programs, where do we begin? Where is that front door? And I sometimes call Denise Noe and she is my deputy director for the outreach program. I sometimes compare us to CarMax. And that may sound really silly, but when I get done explaining it, it makes really great sense. You need a vehicle, but you don't really know which vehicle you need. So we're kind of like CarMax for veteran related programs and services. Maybe you're struggling with underemployment or unemployment, eviction prevention concerns, behavioral health issues. I like to say that Denise and I are kind of like the CarMax. A veteran can contact us and we can educate them on the VA. We can educate them on the Stephen Cohen Clinic that's operated under Easter Seals down in Silver Spring. We can educate them on McVet and the Baltimore Station in Baltimore and the VA's homeless services. We can kind of provide to them a menu of options to satisfy their needs. I always say, it's our obligation to inform of all the various resources that are out there to empower a veteran to make the best decision based on whatever the particular need is. And another thing that Brian was talking about was behavioral health and the issue of suicide prevention. In 2019, there was legislation that was passed, veteran suicide prevention. It required a comprehensive action plan to be developed in a staged approach. The short-term action plan is due to the General Assembly and to the Governor July 1 of this calendar year, with a schedule for implementation of the plan by 2023. The long-term action plan is due to the General Assembly and the Governor 2023 for full implementation, I believe, by 2028. Maryland was extremely blessed to receive an invitation from the federal VA and the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration to participate in the nationwide Governor's Challenge to prevent suicide among service members, veterans, and their families last year. I was asked by the Behavioral Health Administration to serve as co-lead on that challenge. It was very serendipitous that we received the invitation to participate in that, because all of the work that we have done from onset as part of that challenge has informed the short-term action plan that is currently under review by the Behavioral Health Administration. So it hasn't just been a Maryland approach. It has been, we have done a nationwide scan of what is going on in other states. We are looking to best practices. The challenge focuses on 3 strategic priority areas. The first one being identifying service members, screening for risk. The second is promoting connectedness and improving care transitions. The third one is increasing lethal means safety and safety planning. And we added a 4th to bring it into alignment with the action plan to be presented to the General Assembly. We included peer support. So we're looking at the creation of a SMVF credential for peer specialists in the state of Maryland. So to Brian's point, we are strong, but we are mighty. We put together a team of about 35 individuals to participate in this challenge, all the way from the federal VA suicide prevention coordinators, the Navy Reserves, the TAP program manager at Joint Base Andrews, the National Guard, state agencies, NAMI, AFSP, serving together. I mean, I could go on and on, but it was very important to us to make sure that we were considering as many diverse stakeholders as possible in the development of this plan. And we're very excited to be able to present that plan to our elected officials. And we're even more excited to see how it is received and to see possibly, you know, some systemic change implemented to address this very important issue.
Thank you. And that's, it is really important. I mean, you make a great point about making sure that we're not just getting the stakeholders involved, but that they are, you know, that they're an active voice, because I think so often what happens, particularly with behavioral health, is that everybody is trying to solve this, but they're solving it in their own silos. And we're not necessarily, you know, having a coordination of effort. You know, when you're talking about looking at you know, a nationwide scan and best practices, there are other places that have found solutions, and we should be able to build on those solutions rather than trying to constantly reinvent the wheel. And I think that's a really, really great approach. I wanted to turn a little bit to two issues that we haven't talked extensively about, which are the fact that when somebody is in the military, it's a family affair. You know, it impacts the entire family. It impacts the spouse and the family unit. And I think often when we look at policies for veterans, we're not always looking at the whole family unit. I think Mr. Smith, Brian Smith, made a great point about that, about you know, surviving spouses and their ability to sell their house and move on and still be able to maintain those benefits. But I wanted to, Delegate Rogers, I wanted to turn to you actually on this. because, obviously you are a veteran who is in office, who is looking at policy through that lens. And what have you seen that we have done? What can we do better to make sure that we're not just addressing the needs of our veterans, but also the needs of that whole family unit?
So, it's often said that you recruit a troop, soldier, sailor, airman, or marine, but you retain a family, and so that really sort of kind of denotes the importance of the family that actually serves along with the soldier. So in Maryland, I know that a lot of the schools systems, jurisdictions really take into consideration the fact that military families do serve alongside the soldier, and there's a military compact which ensures that, in terms of graduation requirements and that sort of thing, there's an acknowledgement that, if you're in your third or fourth school in high school, that, there's certain requirements that as long as you meet them, you're still going to graduate, even though you may have moved here your senior year. That's just one example. I know that there are some of the tax legislation, and I know it's specific to certain jurisdictions like Montgomery County and in Anne Arundel County, that surviving spouses are given consideration, not with respect to what Ryan mentioned. So if you didn't actually take that note down, Heather, maybe I can co-sponsor it with you next year.
Yep.
But I mean, that is an area where we can improve, but I know that there are some things on the books that certainly take into consideration surviving spouses. So it is important that as we look at policy legislation, that we do remember that, while you might recruit a troop, you retain a family. And it's important that you take into consideration, those things that we can do to support our military families.
Thank you so much. And in health and government operations, we work on a lot of compact bills, which are they're specifically designed to help our military families, because so often, if you are licensed in a particular health field, you don't want to have to get licensed every time you move, and even you don't want to be able to operate on a federal property and then not be able to operate within the state where you were serving.
To your point, that was legislation that we passed. Well, probably not the best way to put it. We passed last year, because we actually passed it in 2019, but it came before our committee again last year, and I was one of the co-sponsors along with Senator Pro Tem Melanie Griffin, to make sure that your credentials in Maryland are good in Maryland if they were, also good in Florida or California or another state if you're married to a service member. So that is something that's very important, because it's very difficult for spouses that travel with their service member to have to get, recognized for the credentials that they already have from somewhere else. And while the federal level already offers that reciprocity, sometimes certain states don't do that. So I'm glad to see that Maryland is moving in the direction where they are recognizing more and more credentials that military spouses come with from other states.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Tootle, you had more to add on.
Well, I think it might be useful to put some kind of dimension when we're talking about military families. That's a very important component of our active and military veterans families here in Anne Arundel County. And I speak to Anne Arundel County because that's where I have paid most of my attention with regard to the state. But we're somewhat unique. This is the only county in the state that has 3 active military bases in it. No other county has the number of bases that we have. And we have one of the largest bases in the state in the Fort Meade complex over in West County. Now, we have, the VA tells us that we have around 50,000 veterans in the county, okay? But but when you start considering the number of active duty folks and their families, the number of folks we're talking about is pushing 85 to 90,000 people. The county has 121 public schools in it, and our public schools have over 9,000 military affiliated children in attendance in our county schools. And that's just Anne Arundel County. So we've got a lot of kids who are subject to a lot of family upset, movement, just what Mike said. You know, kids who go to multiple schools due to changes of duty stations. But then we have a good portion of our active folks who are dealing with deployment, to where all of a sudden it's single family, it's a single parent family that's dealing. And the challenges to our schools, whether it's Anne Arundel County schools or other county schools, is how do you recognize, how do you deal with the behavioral issues that accompany, large family disruptions? Now, Maryland, along with almost, I think, every state in the nation, has signed a compact that I can't think of the name of it. It's called MIC3 or something like that. I think my memory is failing me a little bit, in which exactly what Mike talked about, these guarantees of equity dealing with military dependent children, so that they can successfully get through the education process and not be hampered in a very negative way, with like eligibility for college admission and things like that. What we don't have in the state of Maryland, and I know specifically in Anne Arundel County, is the follow-on mandate within our education system within the state that says, yes, the state has signed up to MIC3, but there's nothing in enabling legislation in the state of Maryland that says the counties are then mandated in turn, in order to receive state employment support funds, to make sure that they have properly certified and trained and equipped counselors within the schools to in fact be enabled and be equipped to recognize those specific issues that deal with what military affiliated kids have to deal with. I mean, we're in a line with the basic compact, but we haven't put in place the enabling work that says, okay, now we've got the contact, we've agreed to the compact, what are we doing to make sure that these kids in our public school systems are properly supported with counseling and psychiatric help and so on. And like I said, we got a lot of kids. We got 9,000 in this county alone. And we have a number of schools that have well over 100 students in attendance within those schools. And obviously, the majority of our military affiliated kids are in West County. And the Fort Meade Alliance Group is doing a very good job partnering with Fort Meade in trying to serve as best they can the needs of the military families that are in fact clustered in the west part of our county. But we need state legislation, and we also need the enabling funding and legislation that comes right down into the county public school systems to in fact put in place what is needed to support our military affiliated kids. Enough said.
And I think that's a great point, because we talked earlier about cultural competency for our veterans, but we really haven't spoken to cultural competency for our families, and particularly for our children, and the unique needs and concerns that they have from the nature of the military environment. Ms. Burrell, you had more to add on.
Well, for one, I am so thankful that you brought up the issue of families and children, because I was an active duty military spouse for 12 years, and I do have 2 children who do attend schools in Anne Arundel County. So this is a very important topic to me. There was the legislation that was introduced this session to create the Purple Star Schools program that would allow for specialized training for guidance staff on military cultural competency, on the experience of military connected children. And I think it would be so nice to be able to see some degree of training provided to, at the very least, school psychologists and school counselors on signs and symptoms that a professional might see in a child. And we haven't even touched on children of the National Guard. I mean, we've had more National Guard members activated post 9/11 in Maryland than in all of our history. And we haven't even touched on our National Guard and our National Guard connected families and children. Maryland is home to approximately 160,000 veteran households with children. And I can remember when my oldest son was in kindergarten, and at the time we were in Baltimore County. And I can remember going up to his kindergarten teacher and saying, I just want to let you know, my child's father is deployed in the Middle East right now. And if you see anything, notice anything, please let me know. And to no fault of her own, she kind of looked at me, and I don't really think she knew what to say. Not because she didn't want to say anything, but perhaps she just didn't know what to say. And if there was an opportunity for continuing education in our schools, provide that, that could be provided to, again, guidance staff, school psychologists, to raise awareness of what our children are experiencing, children of active duty, as well as, children of veterans, because their experience is, and I guess I speak personally here, but their experience is different when they have had a mother or a father who has deployed in a combat zone. It's different.
Mm-hmm. And I would say by extension, we probably want that training to be available to our resource officers too, for the schools that have school resource officers, because that is, that is an important part of informed care. We talk about trauma informed care, but you're right that the needs are unique, and we don't necessarily understand them. Mr. Smith, you had more to add onto this topic as well.
Yes, I did. Thank you. And this is one Dan was talking about, and we start wondering about barriers and obstacles and how do we really figure it out? Because as Mike Rogers said, you recruit a service member, you retain a family. And, when you think about how dependent most of our married couples now are on two incomes to make things happen. And when you start looking at a military couple with transitions, moves, things of that nature, one state to another, and how hard it is to keep that second income going sometimes, because some of those some obstacles that are so arcane that who would have even thought. So that that really spurred my mind. And I know Dana and Mike Rogers know all about this. I mean, used to be Harold Cooney. I think it's now Chris Arnold, who's with the Defense State Liaison Office, with the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the national level. And really their thing is to reach out to states and say, here are barriers to our kids and spouses of our service members when they come into your state. Let me tell you what, Mike, when you're talking about Senator Griffith and the great work she's done, maybe that was you, Delegate Bagnall, or Delegate Geraldine Valentino Smith. I mean, you see that stuff coming out of her office. Let me tell you what, Defense State Liaison. I mean, I knew Harold Cooney pretty well. He was there till I left. I never got to meet Chris Arnold. I mean, Harold was beaten. He was up there and he was like, hey, here are these simple fixes. They ain't going to cost you nothing, that we can really pull down these barriers to keeping these families together. Because why families don't stay in the military? Because the spouse can't keep a meaningful second job, because it gets to be so darn hard for that kid to transfer into a school. Some of the legislation, not sure what happened this session, but last session, some of that stuff is, hey, if the service member transfers out before their child who has been accepted into a Maryland school actually starts, we're going to now stick them for out-of-state tuition. Are you kidding me? Or, they can't register for classes before you're actually physically there, even though they're transferring in from halfway around the world. Are you kidding me? So the thing I would say, and this isn't just for members of the legislature. I mean, it's for the Dan Toodles and everybody else in the world. I mean, if you really want to know the barriers our military families are facing, Defense State Liaison, I mean, they got a website. I mean, I'll track it down and at least get it back to you folks to post to Luke. But I mean, they got good stuff. They tell you state by state what can we do to make it better. I mean, that's good stuff. I mean, and it's cheap, it's free, it's darn near free. Just pass the bill and it'll make life better. So I just wanted to throw that out as a plug for the Office of the Secretary of Defense State Liaison.
Well, thank you so much. And I do want to be aware of time because I know we're coming up to time. So I wanted to give everybody a final opportunity for some final thoughts. You know, obviously we could continue to talk quite extensively. You know, lessons learned from COVID, what we can do, you know, what we did, what we can do better. And Delegate Rogers, I wanted to start with you because I know you were generous enough to make time for us tonight, and I know that you've got to hop on a plane fairly soon.
So, Delegate Bagnall, thank you so much. I mean, and thank you for all you do for District 33 and for the state. Proud to serve beside you. You know, Heather just does incredible work in behavioral health and so many other areas. So thank you for putting this on. You know, to the distinguished panelists, you know, Dan, Brian, Dana, honored to serve with all of you. And I just look forward to the next opportunity for us to come together and do what we can to support our veterans here in Maryland. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much for your service to our state, to our nation, and to your constituents in District 32. Mr. Tootle, you know, lessons learned from COVID. You know, what can we use moving forward? How can we do better, and how can we build on what we did?
Well, you know, from a very personal standpoint, obviously, I'm older, and I'm in that target group that was right in the crosshairs of COVID-19 when it kicked off. I was able through I participate in TRICARE instead of Medicare as a military retiree, and through TRICARE and through local medical support, I was able to, and my wife, we were able to get to first from the county testing. That was important. So the county stood very, very quickly with testing. And then we were able to get through as soon as possible, we were able to get through the vaccinations. And that was very helpful. At the same time, I was receiving correspondence from the Veterans Administration saying, hey, you're a veteran. If you're not getting your COVID shots locally, hey, we're set up to help you from the VA. So we didn't have to take advantage of the VA opportunity for vaccination, but we certainly were supported, you know, locally here in the state and from the county due to all the work that was done between the Maryland legislation as well as the county offices. So. And then when I see standing up, you know, at the Navy and Marine Corps Stadium here very recently, the mass vaccination site, it's going to, I think it's really going to increase participation in the vaccination process here in the county. We've had Anne Arundel County has a good sized population. And if you track in the Capitol every day as the Capitol publishes the statistics, in this particular county, and of course this involves District 33, we've had a pretty good instance of COVID involvement, including beyond sickness, deaths. Our numbers are up there. We're in the thousands here in the county. Thank God that the responses have started coming forward strongly now, and it looks like we're going to get on top of this. And to recognize what was done, you know, with our military forces, whether active or reserve or guard, that jumped in to help out. When I went over to get my COVID shot, guess who was there? Maryland National Guard.
National Guard.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
So thanks to everybody for all the work that was done to try to get us through this mess. And I think we got wonderful, beautiful lessons to learn on just not how to manage a situation like this, But most important, I think we learned a darn good lesson on how to work with each other beyond the divides that broke us so apart over the recent past. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. Mr. Smith, your final thoughts.
Well, thank you. I'll be brief. I've spoken enough, but I would say go out and adopt a dog and come out to Maryland Therapeutic Riding and visit a horse, and hope to see you all around Anne Arundel County soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. Ms. Burrell, your final thoughts. What did we get right? What can we do better? How can we in the General Assembly support what you're doing in veteran services?
I think just continue the communication and the open dialogue, develop a good understanding of what the state's capacity currently is, develop an understanding of what our abilities are, and learn of our challenges, learn how we're currently collaborating, learn more about the federal VA and the role that they play for our veterans across Maryland. I think just continuing the open lines of communication and dialogue is perhaps the most important thing, because we are the ones that are in the trenches day in and day out, and we are the ones that have the opportunity to reach out to across the nation, especially now. And with regards to COVID and all of us teleworking, I've had calls all across the country over the course of the last year to better understand how other state VAs are doing business. So any way that we can help inform the work that you're doing and provide information on, what we've learned, about what other states have implemented and how it's working, please use us as a resource. Because I think we're all, as we've heard 1,000 times, we're all in this together, right? Our end game here is to improve the quality of life for our service members, our veterans, and their families.
I think that's absolutely true, and I know that we feel like it becomes a cliche when we say it, but I truly believe that, and I think one of the if we're looking for silver linings from this entire experience is that we have so unsiloed, then that we have been able to use Zoom and telehealth and all of a sudden we have access to resources that we simply didn't have before. I want to thank everyone who was a part of this panel tonight: Mr. Tootle, Mr. Smith, Ms. Burrell, Delegate Rogers. Thank you to Adam Spangler from Congressman Brown's office, who is always here, always looking for opportunities to really meet the needs of District 33 in Anne Arundel County, as well as the state of Maryland. Thank you to everyone who watched the live stream and participated in tonight's panel. I think this was a really, really important town hall, and I appreciate everybody's willingness to adjust to my naive thought that I would be able to have a town hall in the middle of the final week of session. So thank you all so much for being adaptable. And I'm going to turn it over to Luke Tudball for our final wrap.
Thanks so much, everyone, for being here, especially our esteemed panel. I know that Delegate Rogers had to leave a little early. He's on another meeting as we speak. But I wanted to say thank you on behalf of Delegate Bagnall, but also to say thank you to Delegate Bagnall for hosting this town hall, and also the entire series of town halls that we've had this year. If you did want to catch up on any of them, if you did miss them, of course, they are available on this YouTube channel that we're currently broadcasting on. And you can also find links to that on the social media and also on heatherbagnall.com, where you can also send us a message if you'd like, or subscribe to the newsletter, and we'll send out updates as we go through the interim on everything that's happening. And we do hope that you stay in touch and send us any comments, questions, concerns that you may have. You can also email the delegate's office, of course, directly, which is heather.bagnall@house.state.md.us. And we hope to see you at the next town hall, which will be the legislative roundup Delegate will be presenting basically everything that happened during the legislative session this year and where we're going to go as we move forwards. All right, so we look forward to seeing you at that. Otherwise, have a great evening. Please stay safe. Please get a jab, a vaccination. Please look after your family, and we will see you the next time.